We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. Boxingego unpack. Yeah. We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live.
Bad news. Floyd Money Mayweather, easy work. I ain't gotta worry about it. Like I said before, David Benavidez, he's a young and hungry champion. He's a young, hungry lion, and I think he could beat Canelo. Floyd says David Benavidez can beat Canelo Alvarez. Payday. You want payday. I know that. We're going to talk about that in this video. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Now, I don't know how you found my video, but somehow, some way you made it. You arrived at the content. Please help others find the video by throwing a like on the video. It's free, it's simple, it's quick, it costs you nothing. Just run them likes up. Now, a lot of people, based on the YouTube analytics, it did like over 18,000 views in, a matter of hours. So thank you guys all for the support. Subscribe to the channel for the latest and greatest. I drop the illest content in all of boxing. This is your one-stop shop. Now, I made a video breaking the news. Canelo Alvarez, according to his manager and trainer, Eddie Reynoso, he's saying that Canelo is moving up in May to cruiserweight to fight Moakbu, right? An African fighter. He's not a heralded name. I seen him before because I seen him. He previously fought Tony Bellew and he got knocked out in that fight. He has 2 losses. Both of the 2 losses came by knockout. So he's, I believe, from Congo, and he has a belt now. And Canelo wants to pretty much cherry pick and pick his way through the division. He's clearly not the best cruiserweight. Canelo wants to just run up there and say he's try to beat him so he can say he's a champion in all these divisions. And this is very predictable. Bad news for Canelo is Floyd Mayweather just did an interview, and you guys seen the clip at the beginning. Floyd Mayweather, he says that he was talking to David Benavidez, and he says, I think you can beat him. David Benavidez reaffirmed, I know I could beat him, or I think I could beat him too. David Benavidez, he looked great. He's a hard style to beat. He's been calling out guys like Charlo. He's been calling out Caleb Plant. And most importantly, he's been calling out Canelo. What does Canelo do to repay him after a sensational performance? He says he's moving up to cruiserweight. Now, I had to do an unpack because I wanted to spend some time going into detail about why I don't like this move from Canelo Alvarez, right? Now, casual fans and old media and stuff, they're going to say people like myself who don't really fancy this move by Canelo, we're hating. But ironically enough, you could call me whatever you want. You could say I'm hating or whatever. It doesn't bother me because at the end of the day, I know I'm speaking the truth. And Canelo's moves have become far too predictable at this point. So before he made the move, I told you what move he wasn't going to make. And it's on record. I have videos, and you can check them right now on the channel, where I doubled down on it too. When David Benavidez beat late replacement Kyron Davis by stoppage, I told you guys in the Boxingego watch party and videos after that based on how David Benavidez looked, and he looked like a problem, and in post-fight, he called out Canelo Alvarez and Charlo. But Charlo, the reason why I'm not focused on Charlo is because, one, Charlo's not of the division that David Benavidez currently fights at, and he's a champion in the division below. So Charlo has the choice to determine if he wants to vacate his belt and move up to another division and then straight away fight a David Benavidez. You know, that's probably not recommended for anybody to move up, and unless you know, Floyd Mayweather or something, move up and then your first fight has to be the tallest order. There's not many people who are doing that, like going up and fighting the number one. Like, for example, Terrence Crawford, he's a great fighter, but he moved up and he fought for a title his first fight, but he fought against Jeff Horn. Jeff Horn, in my opinion, didn't really beat Pacquiao. It was some politics. The fight was, first of all, in Australia, and you know, it was a good fight. It was action, and Pacquiao didn't look sensational, I wouldn't say, but I thought Pacquiao won the fight. So you got to understand that I give credit to Crawford for moving up and fighting the champion straight away, but you got to put it in perspective. You didn't go up and fight undefeated Keith Thurman your first fight based on whatever. I'm not saying Terrence Crawford wouldn't, but you didn't go up and fight Errol Spence or Pacquiao or anybody like that your first fight. So the focus should be on the newly undisputed Canelo Alvarez. And there's a saying, heavy is the head that wears the crown. Canelo seems to want all of the accolades and praise that are associated with being the man, right? Canelo Alvarez, he'll say stuff like, it's me, Etta, you know, I'm the face of boxing. His fans will say he's the face of boxing. He'll say, oh, I did this. I became undisputed in 11 months. No one's really done this. And, you know, say basically I'm the king. He put on the king hat after the fight with Caleb Plant, after he stopped him, right? But I can break this down, and I got to separate the videos, so, you know, just for continuity. But I don't like Canelo moving up to cruiserweight for several reasons. For one, you see it on the screen. I tweeted this right after the news broke. I said, now Canelo will say, I just fought at cruiserweight. So he's going to fight at 190 pounds against a guy that a lot of people aren't familiar with, right? It's not a big name in America. Like, listen, first of all, there's champions in every division, and some of those names ring bells and some of them don't. So it goes without saying, I don't got to spend too much time on this, that fights with Canelo Alvarez and David Benavidez anywhere in America would be much larger than UNPACKED or whatever his name is, right? Guys like Jermall Charlo versus Canelo, even Demetrius Andrade if he comes through the Quigley fight. These will all be bigger fights. In my opinion, I think Charlo and Benavidez are the creme de la creme in terms of fights that should be great fights and commercially blockbuster successful. But there are a lot of people that want to see David Benavidez and Canelo, but there's also people who want to see guys like Demetrius Andrade just because he's been in the queue and his name has been linked. So I don't like this from Canelo. Like I said in my tweet, now Canelo can say, I just fought at 190 pounds at cruiserweight, so I can't make 168 pounds now for David Benavidez or a guy like Jermall Charlo, like he did at 160 pounds to not fight against Jermall Charlo or Andrade. What I mean is Canelo Alvarez, the pressure was on him to fight Jermall Charlo or Demetrius Andrade. Demetrius Andrade had the WBO belt, and to become undisputed, which Canelo Alvarez said he wanted to do, he would have had to fight and get that strap off of Demetrius Andrade. Bear in mind that Canelo could have fought Demetrius Andrade in the previous division of 154 pounds, which he had several fights in or around, and I have to say in or around because he basically made up his own weight class there of 155. So he fought the guys like Angulo, Lada there, fought Mayweather at the catchweight, fought Cotto at a catchweight, but he spent some time right around there. He even fought Liam Smith for the WBO belt after Demetrius Andrade got stripped, but he didn't fight Demetrius Andrade at 154, and then he could have went through him and tried to get the last remaining belt, but he didn't do that. Or he could have fought Jermall Charlo, same deal. He could have fought either Charlo, Jermell or Jermall at 154, or he moved up to 160, and then a little bit after that, Jermall Charlo, Big Charlo, moved up to 160 and became the #1 contender or mandatory or whatnot for Canelo Alvarez. He was really for Triple G, and then Canelo beat Triple G, etc. So that being said, he would have had to go through one of those talented, undefeated African-American fighters and now champions, and Andre was a champion at the time, but he chose to move up and say, oh, I'm fighting Sergey Kovalev, another fight that nobody asked for. And Kovalev, many people thought he was shot worn, he was washed. He wasn't the same since the Andre Ward fights. And then after that, after the pair of tough Andre Ward fights, he then got knocked out again by by Aliter Alvarez. And then he had to rematch him, and then he outboxed him. But he didn't stop Aliter Alvarez like he got stopped by Aliter Alvarez in the first fight. And then he went tooth and nail with Anthony Yarde, who had never fought at that level before, and Kovalev almost got knocked out. And then on a quick turnaround, Canelo chooses to fight him. So you guys can rapidly see the game that Canelo is playing here, right? Now he can do the same thing that he did and say what he did when he went up to fight Kovalev. He knocked him out at 175. That's 15 pounds heavier than the middleweight. So now Canelo wants to stop the bleeding. He moved to 75, fought Kovalev, a fight nobody really expected. And he said, hey, I'm now a multiple division champion. I'm a champion in whatever, I think it's 4 weight classes. Look at me now. But we see what you're doing. You picked on Kovalev at that given moment. He was off of a very tough fight where he almost didn't make it through. Put it this way. To further prove my point, Kovalev's trainer, Buddy McGirt, didn't like what he was seeing from his fighter in the Anthony Yarde fight. So he threatened to stop the fight if Kovalev didn't turn it up and show him something. He's like, you got to show me something. If you don't, I'm stopping this. So that goes to further submit what I'm saying as the truth. If the guy trainer is threatening to stop the fight. So that goes to show you there were moments of the fight where it was ugly for him. Luckily, he didn't stop the fight, and Kovalev was able to stop an exhausted Anthony Yarde, right? Then all of a sudden, Canelo said, hey guys, now I can no longer make 160. I'm never going back down to 160. He did say, I'll go back down to, initially he said, I'll go back down to 160 for Errol Spence. Later, he changed it and said, oh, I'll fight Errol Spence at a catch weight of 164. Bear in mind that Errol Spence just got in a car accident in the last several years, and he fights at 147. So don't look forward to that fight happening now that Canelo's talking about moving to 190. So as I stated, this is more of the same. Now, if Canelo goes to 190, he could be like, oh, hey, look at guys like Roy Jones Jr. When he went to heavyweight and he came back down and fought Tarver in a rematch, he got knocked out. So now this becomes a way out to try to stop the bleeding and get the pressure from David Benavidez off your back. And guys like Jermall Charlo, guys that people want to see you fight at least 168. And now you can say, oh, I can't make 168 anymore. I'm fighting at Bridger weight, and this whole charade can go on and on and on and on. This could be a long-term plan that they created. This might be why the WBC, aka We Back Canelo, this might be why they created the Bridger weight. What a coincidence. Created a brand new division that nobody cared for. They're willing to do anything for Canelo to try to make him look like he set history. And they're trying to really manufacture what other great fighters had to go through the old-fashioned way. They're trying to put that, give Canelo the alley-oop, right? Guys like Manny Pacquiao, I want to, it's up to 45, it's up to my promoter. Pacquiao went up 8 weight classes. No handouts. He had to fight the David Diaz's, the Ricky Hattons, the Floyd Mayweathers. He had to fight the Juan Manuel Marquez's, Mexican leyenda. 4 times. He had to fight Marco Antonio Barrera 2 times. He had to fight Eric Morales, legend, as well, 3 times, right? So he had to earn his keep. Oscar De La Hoya, Olympic gold medalist, jumped up 2 weight classes. So he really moved. Margarito, Shane Mosley, he really was moving up, fighting bigger guys. Now what they're doing with Canelo is they're trying to, it's like Build-A-Bear. They're trying to build it like, so the history books showed that he's this champion in all these divisions, but at light heavyweight, you beat a washed up Kovalev. That's the reality. And the fight looked FAF. You didn't fight Dmitry Bivol, who's undefeated. You didn't fight Artur Beterbiev, who got cracks, who's undefeated, right? Same thing. Look at Canelo's whole run. Everything I predicted, you now see it live in the flesh. West Side, baby. Even at super middleweight, he became undisputed only after David Benavidez forfeited his title because he missed weight in the pandemic, and the WBC did everything they could to make sure that belt didn't go into David Benavidez's hands. Because can you imagine if David Benavidez, like if the WBC did what was right, they could have ordered David Benavidez versus Avni Yildirim. And then Canelo, if he wanted to actually fight people, right, then he could have fought the winner of that fight, which we know David Benavidez would have obliterated even worse than Canelo did. He would have obliterated average eardrum. And we know that. So, I mean, this whole thing is really like a circus. And now he's going to go up and wait to fight some African. And then now he has an excuse to never come back down to 168, and or just get all this experience in way like superior, like higher weight classes to the point where, you keep stringing it out. Then you're going to be so much bigger. And you're going to say, oh, Charlo has to fight me at 172 or, 180. And Charlo has no experience at that. So, it's just really weird behavior. And the Canelo fans act like they love it. But the reason why we know that's cap is Canelo's clearly, David Benavidez called this out too. Canelo's clearly just doing whatever he wants. The reason we know is because notice how a lot of these people that Canelo is electing to fight, right? Nobody has ever heard a Canelo fan request these types of people. Like who in their right mind ever just said, hey, I want to see Canelo versus Umbaku at at cruiserweight. You have never heard anyone say that. At the time he fought and said he was moving up to fight Kovalev, who requested that? Who, name a fan who was just like, man, you know what fight I want to see? I want to see Canelo versus Kovalev at 175 when he had just said he wanted to be undisputed at 160, right? So Canelo's trying to create history, but he's creating his own fake history because it's really, he's not there. You got fighters that are the people's champ, and then you got guys like Canelo. Canelo is finessing and gaming the system. It's that simple. This is why Mexican legends like Juan Manuel Marquez and Nacho Beristain and Chavez Sr. at points and different fighters in general and people like myself have always pointed this out about Canelo. Marquez, he's been the OG about this. He said Canelo will never be received the same way as some of the Mexican legends because of how he moves. And now you see why. And then people got mad at me for saying it, and they got mad at Marquez and said Marquez is hating, but we on point. We said what is actually happening. Canelo is making his own history and making these moves, and then everyone's saying, oh, Charlo and Benavidez and Andre, they need to fight each other. Bro, this is a competitive sport. It's still a sport. So Canelo, why? Floyd Mayweather, the biggest Canelo fan and the biggest Floyd hater, has to admit Floyd Mayweather never did this. He didn't go outside of the realm. And I'm not talking about retired Floyd or, after his last official fight to me was Andre Berto. I'm not talking about anything after that, because him fighting Logan Paul, he's already told you, I'm retired. I'm a rob the bank. That's retired Floyd as far as I'm concerned. Canelo is 31 years old doing these things. Floyd Mayweather was 36, 37, going on 37, fighting the likes of Canelo Alvarez, who was supposed to be able to beat him and so strong and stuff, and he got toyed with and whooped. Bringing me to my next point. It's funny that the bitter Canelo man fans are mad that Canelo got whooped by Floyd Mayweather in 2013, and they want Floyd to rematch Canelo almost a decade later, and he's retired at the age of 44. They want to give Canelo an advantage. Floyd weighed in 155 pounds versus Logan Paul, who was clearly 190 to 200 plus pounds when they fought, and Canelo is fighting at cruiserweight. So I said, get the F out of here, LOL. So it's just funny that you see all the resentment and jealousy that Canelo lost to Floyd Mayweather. People still are acting like they want to see Floyd and Canelo at this point, and so much has changed. Canelo, he's planning on going to 190 now. You know what I mean? And Floyd still weighing 155 is probably one of his career high weigh-ins at age 44 and retired. I mean, it's just sad what you see from some of the Canelo fans. And they claim that Mayweather was a cherry picker and all that. Floyd never did this. Floyd fought actual true champions and stuff like that. There's a lot of guys with belts. This African dude, he's been stopped 2 times. Yeah, he got a belt, but cruiserweight division is not even a popping division. You know, cruiserweight has never really been a popping division. If anything, you had a few people come out of cruiserweight like Evander Holyfield or David Haye, Alexander Usyk, right? Maris Bradis is nice. And Canelo's not trying to fight none of them. So he's going up fighting Tony Bellew's leftovers. I can't wait to hear what Tony Bellew has to say about this. And the danger is not in terms of who's the more skilled guy, because Canelo, he's going to be faster. He's the guy coming up. He's going to be more skilled, better ring IQ. It's just him taking a punch from somebody that big. That's the only allure. You know what I'm saying? That's the only allure. But the goal is to not get hit with nothing silly. And this is not probably the person that can push you to the max. If you want to show that you're really raw at cruiserweight and you want to do it the right way, fight a top person. Even if he fought, see, a lot of y'all don't really know boxing. That's why I don't even have to go and respond, because there's gonna be Canelo, Chupapi Muñeño, and negative fans and stuff leaving comments. But I don't even have to really say too much, because I know they don't know boxing. They don't even know some of the fighters that I'm about to mention. Like if Canelo moved up and fought Dorticos, I would give that more respect and more credence, because Dorticos, he got cracks and he can scrap. You know, he's actually nice with it. If he were to fight against Lawrence Okoli, if he was gonna fight against Maris Bradis, a guy like that, these would all be better fights. But he's talking about moving up, and now the pressure. So David Benavidez starts edging in and closing the gap. Floyd Mayweather says, I think David Benavidez will beat Canelo, and now Canelo gets out of Dodge. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. You can't make this stuff up. So once again, Canelo's just making up whatever he wants to do. And, to each his own. We'll see if PBC wants to pick up this fight. And even if they did pick it up, I can't imagine them paying what they paid for the Caleb Plant, because that was actually intriguing. You had a Caucasian American star who was did great numbers on Fox, and he had a charismatic, sparky personality, beautiful wife. He knows how to talk in front of the camera, he dresses well, and he was an Olympic alternate, things like that. So that was compelling and made for great TV. Canelo versus some African dude that most people aren't familiar with in America. That's why they're talking about this fight happening in Africa. So Canelo, he can have fun fighting in Africa or whatever. It's just not big. They might, this might be on DAZN, or who knows who's going to even carry this, if it even gets that far. But, I'm not really a fan of it, because, again, it becomes a scapegoat. And now if he gets too far away from where he's at, then he can easily say, oh, I'm never fighting David Benavidez because I can't make the weight anymore. That's too supreme of a weight cut. So it's all strategic moves that Canelo thinks is fooling people. And, and that's what it is. But he's not doing and listening once again to what the fans are saying. fans are asking Canelo to fight Jermall Charlo. And it's funny because you have the Canelo Chupapi Muñeño, and based on Charlo's last performance versus Montiel, they're saying stuff like, oh, Canelo would obliterate the Charlos. Charlo brothers on the All Access epilogue said, oh, I could beat Canelo. One of them said it, you know, and said I could beat Canelo based on how he looked versus Caleb Plant. And you had a bunch of Canelo fans and they're saying, oh, Canelo would dog Charlo. Okay, then why doesn't he fight Charlo next? He's gonna. So people want to see Canelo fight a black or brown fighter, right? Because that's been so furthest from what he's been fighting recently. And then he chooses to fight a black fighter that no one's really even familiar with in another weight class. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, right? You really can't make this stuff up. So it's just funny to hear the Canelo fans say stuff like, oh, Charlo will get obliterated and Demetrius Andrade is a horrible fighter. But so this cruiserweight champion, he's the best, even though he's been stopped twice. He got stopped in his pro debut. Look it up. He got stopped by Tony Bellew, who got stopped by Usyk. So what does this really prove? Tony Bellew, he was pretty good at cruiserweight, but he's not as good as Usyk because Usyk knocked him out and had his head hit the ropes like the Ultimate Warrior. You know what I mean? His head was shaking off the ropes like the Ultimate Warrior. So it doesn't really prove what people think. The only thing is he just bigger man. You just can't get hit with nothing crazy, you know? But in terms of skill and ring IQ and big fight experience, I mean, come on. It just really doesn't prove it. So Canelo, it doesn't look like he wants to test himself in that regard. He's trying to go like the path of least resistance. He found an avenue to get undisputed. The WBC kicked in an extra belt for Caleb Smith instead of him having to fight David Benavidez, who really would have won that title from Caleb Smith if they made Benavidez and Caleb Smith, or if they ordered Avni Yildirim versus David Benavidez. Benavidez would have won. That's why you have, it's just a bad look, man. It's bad news. Floyd Mayweather saying that David Benavidez can beat him, and Canelo's getting the furthest thing from David Benavidez. And the WBC, they're supplying the boat, they're supplying the bus to allow this and accepting this. So I just don't see this being a big fight. It's not really interesting to me. And for me, the thing I really don't like it because it gets Canelo so far away from where the top fights are that people are asking for. Then it becomes a way for Canelo to not make his way back down to fight the David Benavidez. You know what I mean? So it's like, what's the point of making these radical jumps? And here's the other thing is like, why make these radical jumps if you're not finna fight the best in that weight class, or you're not gonna stay up there? Like, I wouldn't even mind if Canelo fought at light heavyweight against Kovalev and then fight Beterbiev and Bivol next. Stay up there, stay your butt up there. But these like once and done, I mean, everyone sees what it is. Everyone can see what it is. You're trying to pop in, fight someone you think you can pick off. Just like I told you, Canelo is an opportunist and Canelo is a vulture, and now you guys see it. This is vulture behavior. You're waiting for the land animals to kill the buffalo, and then you come down and scoop down and eat the carcass, so you don't have to put in the maximum work. And then you can collect data on the David Benavidez or Jermall Charlo. Hopefully they off each other, fight each other, and then beat each other to hell. And then you come back maybe and then try to pick off one of them, you know, after they've had a tough fight. I mean, it's just very easy to see. It's cherry picking at its finest. And I know it sounds crazy because people are like, how's it a cherry pick if he's moving up in weight? It's strategic moving up. Like I said, you're not moving up to fight Dorticos. You're not moving up to fight Miris Bradis. You're not moving up to fight Okoli or or Usyk when he was up there. So we see what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like Devin Haney, he can move up to welterweight when there was, remember that dude that beat Robert Guerrero? There's a guy that beat Robert Guerrero, Brian Peralta or something. You know, that's like him having a belt and then Devin Haney move up to 47 and then he beat him. Or when Terrence Crawford was at 135. I mean, there's a lot of fighters that can do this, right? Somebody gets a belt, you know, this is kind of like, to a degree, that's kind of what Broner did. Like, he fought Paulie Malignaggi, who was probably the guy you can move up from 135 to 147 and beat, because a guy like Broner, he couldn't move up from 35 and then beat an Errol Spence at 47, or beat a Floyd Mayweather at 47, or beat Maidana at 47. You see what I'm saying? So, I mean, I just hope this is not what boxing comes to, you know, just cherry picking and picking your path and things like that. And you're not listening to the fans. I haven't heard one person on this planet say they wanted Canelo versus this African dude. You know, if you're going to fight an African American, you know, fight that, like Jamal Charlo, Demetrius Andrade, or David Benavidez, or fight Beterbiev. Like, see, that's the thing that makes Canelo look bad. I could talk about this all day. That's another thing that's making Canelo look bad, is that there's legitimate threats, right? You haven't cleared out. Like, even though you became undisputed, you haven't cleared nothing out. You could go to 175. Beterbiev got cracks. I'd rather you go up one weight class where you're undisputed here, go to one weight class and fight Artur Beterbiev. You know what I mean? He got cracks. He might hit like a cruiserweight. Who knows? You know, he's a champion. Move up there and show you a real light heavyweight champion. You know, but it just popping in and popping out, it doesn't really show nothing at this level. Like when Floyd moved up to 50, he was fighting Canelo. He's fighting De La Hoya. He's fighting Cotto, right? These are the guys he's fighting. He's not moving up, fighting wounded prey, you know, like Kovalev, who looked washed. I'm done. We unpack.
The future is now. The Hibernation 5s by Kenichi Bear. Hybrid gaming and lifestyle headphones. Out of the box, you can connect to any console or PC. Bluetooth ready with a low latency USB adapter, color RGB, and extreme bass mode. The Hibernation 5s adjust to you. Whether you need a gaming, travel, gym, or lifestyle headphones, the Hibernations got you covered. The new Hibernation 5s, link in the description. Customize the way you hear the world. Welcome to the nation.
Are you tired of your YouTube videos not getting any views? Well, consider TubeBuddy. I've used TubeBuddy for years to scale up my YouTube channel. Now we're sitting over 200,000 subscribers. TubeBuddy is a browser extension that offers a ton of built-in productivity and time-saving services to take your channel to the next level. Use my link in the description to get started with TubeBuddy and level up your channel faster. We working.